Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SempreMilan podcast. I'm your host, Oli Fisher, joined once again by Anthony Torgrud.
Good morning, guys.
Morning, America. Good morning,
Yeah, I don't
Vietnam.
know what I was about to say. I got a notification from the Substack because we got a forum feature in there now for our paid members. So if you're interested in harassing us at any time of the day,
Mostly
join
Isaac.
that.
Yeah, mostly Isaac. That is a great little plug. As you mentioned there, over on the app, basically, if you're familiar with stuff like Discord or maybe a WhatsApp channel or things like that, it's a channel where me, you, and Isaac will frequent. There'll be a little talking point in there. People can write their comments, and might start making a note of some of the best comments to read out on the podcast episode. And in the meantime, thank you, as always, to our Substack founding members, Des Windsor, McGlynn, Ali, Tareen, Tito, Matt Morris, Pullman, Joey Gawler, Kemin, MJ, Mats, Luke Villano, Raul Escobar, Rajat, Carlo Fassi, Nasser, and Merlin Flinker, and of course, Derek Favretto as well. I wonder how many names that I'll have to get to before I realistically can't read it out anymore.
Well, you already
30?
almost skipped Derek there, so.
Yeah, no, I did. It's because it's because I've got it on two separate documents at the moment. I really need to figure that out. But yeah, thank you to everybody who has been supporting our stuff over on the Substack throughout the season. Over the last week, in addition to the new chat feature that AJ mentioned there, we have had a bit of exclusive information on Alex Jimenez, who of course played in the Roma friendly that we're going to talk about very briefly, and what Milan's plans are for him, given that he's only technically on loan from Real Madrid. There was a newsletter that was based around the trip to Australia, the reasons behind it, and the bulletin as well as part of that, which condenses all the news if you're not able to keep up with every article that goes out on site. The bonus podcast was me and you, AJ, doing our end of season awards, player of the season, best signing, best moment, best performance, and the flip side of that, the worst player and the worst moments and things like that. So that's an example of the kind of thing you'll find over a few day cycle on the Substack. Without further ado, and also we should mention at this point as well that Maddie's going to be having a little hiatus, so there's going to be comments asking where he is. Of course, he's a very, very busy man. He has a very good job, I think it would be fair to say, and of course he has a young kid. So over the summer, makes sense for him to take a little bit of a breather, and the plan is for him to rejoin us at some point a few weeks down the line. But yeah, we're going to be holding fort, and we're hoping to plug that gap with some guests over the summer, and of course there's going to be plenty of talking points anyway, because it's a massive couple of months that await for the future of the club. Right, let's very briefly do this Roma game then, shall we? Look, if you were there, and I know that we have a lot of listeners from Australia, love and respect to you all, and I hope that you were able to, if you were able to go to the game, that you enjoyed it. There was a huge crowd there, 60,000 people. It beat the crowd for a Taylor Swift concert a couple of years prior, which is mad, albeit the Taylor Swift concert was... There's 48,000 there for the Taylor Swift concert, so I don't know if it was that, like, bits of the stadium weren't open yet, or...
You know what, you're right, yeah, because they do have the block off the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
They said that the ticket prices for Taylor Swift were a lot higher as well. But yeah, that was it. I mean, look, we know the reasons that we were out there. Obviously, it's an end of season friendly as opposed to a preseason friendly, which is not usual. In fact, I can't remember the last time we had one. And we went out there to play Roma, obviously a domestic rival. There were a few Roma fans there, but I got the vibe that it was like 75% Milan at least, which was good to see. But it's a bit of a commercial venture, tied it in with a trip, like to wildlife parks and no doubt some sponsor events. There was like a meet and greet and stuff as well. So an open training session too. So it was all, it looked like a good laugh. Like the players were pictured with koalas and, there were some funny images and videos that came from it. So it looked like it wasn't exactly the chore that people made it out to be. But in terms of the game itself, it was just a bit of a bizarre spectacle. And again, if you went, I hope you had a fantastic time. But it is really hard for me, given we got slated in the last episode for talking about the Salernitana game, by the way. Why did you even talk about a pre-season friendly or something like that? We better not talk about an actual friendly too much. But yeah, there were 7 goals. We lost 5-2. The scoring went as follows. Baldanzi scored the first for them. Really, really weak deflected shot that went through Sportiello. Teo equalised with an absolute banger of a volley. Tammy Abraham scored with pretty good finish just before half-time.
That one was offside, but it wasn't Tammy who was off. It was whoever passed it to Tammy.
Yeah.
Right? And they
Yeah,
don't have
and obviously no VAR, so
yeah, and it doesn't matter either.
he'd had a header saved like moments before that as well, and that was one of. Did I say Sportiello? It was Sportiello, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Mirante didn't go and Maignan didn't go either. Angelino scored in the 54th minute. Then Tomori just made absolutely zero attempt to try and stop him. That was the first of 3 goals in 3 minutes. We hit back with Okafor, nice low finish from inside the box. Then Dybala scored an absolute rocket, which was pretty similar to the one he scored against us in the Europa League quarter, second leg, like right corner of the box, boom, far post, couldn't get anywhere near it. Then Sada Razmoun added a 5th for Roma. They won 5-2. And we had more shots, same number of shots on target, possession pretty even. None of this matters. Like, let's be honest, it was played at walking pace for the first 30 minutes, and then it was like the players realised, okay, we better actually give them a bit of something to cheer here. And then it erupted into chaos when neither team wanted to defend. It was a bit like an NBA preseason game where the focus was all on getting hot and getting into rhythm, and get a bit of confidence. There were some interesting substitutions made. We saw Okafor, Tomori, Chiao, Terracciano, Nava, Musa, Simic, Zaroli, and Bartosagi all come on. Loftus-Cheek, Jovic, and Toriano were the only unused subs. It was a run out. I mean, look, the season ended when we played Salernitana, but that is the season properly ended.
It's Giroud's real final game.
Giroud's last appearance, proper, yeah.
It was interesting because you knew that those subs were coming, right? Like we all expected the kids to get a game. We have players that I think we had 8 players going to the Euros.
Yeah, that's right.
A few to Copa America and other places as well. So you knew you weren't going to get a whole lot. I am interested to see how lackadaisical Tomori was since he didn't get called up. I mean, I don't want to put him on blast because again, it doesn't matter. But you would think of all the players to, kind of not show up, you would think he would be one who would because of that. So that was interesting. And then Roma didn't make the subs that we made. They left it much later. Like Dybala played 75, 80 minutes.
Yeah, that was strange. Yeah,
there's no reason for that. Your most injury-prone best player playing a full 90 in Australia. I mean, once I took it a bit more seriously, and it wasn't us, and that's okay. One thing that I thought was interesting was Pioli was in the stands. He traveled with the team and then just watched.
I never saw a photo of it, but somebody reported it. And apparently, he was there to kind of support Bonera, who I suppose has only ever really done it in an interim basis before, so maybe needed a few pointers here and there. But
and it was Bonera's birthday, so rough birthday for him.
Yeah. So whether it's actually true that he was there, I guess I need to see a photo. But it was reported at the time that he was in the stands. The camera didn't pan to him if he was there. But anyway, yeah. That's it. I mean, look, Teo's volley was lovely. That gave us a little highlight. Okafor came on and looked really bright. And that's all I've got. So I think we move on. And actually, one more thing on the friendly. Did you see what Didier Deschamps said about it? The France national team coach. He said there was a bit about Teo. He said,
I did.
Do you think it's right for Teo to change clubs now? And he said, we talked about it in March. In general, there isn't the same enthusiasm as the Scudetto season, but it seemed to me that he's happy at Milan and where he is also the captain as a foreign player. However, organising a tour to Australia during the full national team retreat, it's not very nice. He wasn't a fan of the timing of it. I'd say go fuck yourself, actually. Even though I don't agree with the friendly either, I don't really like Deschamps. So I think he's moaning for the sake of moaning. The tournament doesn't start for just under 2 weeks. You got plenty of time.
I mean, I agree with you. I also dislike him, so he can go fuck himself. But he is right.
Yeah, he's right.
Like you look at it. So I don't know the Euro schedule, obviously, but I know the Copa America schedule because the USA is participating, and I know that Pulisic obviously didn't travel,
Mm,
so he had 1 week off, and then 2 days ago they started training camp already. So he had just those 4 or 5 days, and if they go the distance in Copa America, which let's be real, USA is not doing that. No one thinks they will, but hypothetically they can.
mm,
Then he will have 4 days from the end of that to report back to preseason.
mm,
Uh, that gives them a total of 9 days of summer break.
mm,
It's a bit ridiculous, and that's with skipping the Australia tour. So now you add that in, and some of these players on teams like France, who very well could go the distance,
mm.
they're not getting a break, and that's not going to bode well for next season when we're in the new 38 team Champions League as well. We have the full season. We have the 2 league Super Cup now we're participating in. Like, there's going to be, I don't know, this is a shot in the dark, but like 70 games next season, and to only have 9 days off over the summer is not cool. I
No.
agree, it's not cool. I have no issue with us going to Australia and doing that for the fans there. I think that's fantastic and should be done, but maybe do it preseason. And that's coming from a guy who gets to go to multiple preseason games because they're in my backyard this year. So, like, I think it should have been in Australia. If that's where they're going to do that game, then you do that at the beginning or the end of preseason. You don't do it 4 days after the season ends when you don't have a manager.
Mm.
It's silly. So, yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts. Deschamps, fuck you, but you're right.
I echo those sentiments entirely. Now we move on. We're going through sort of a series of stuff to recap the 23-24 season, and we've decided that we're going to do some player ratings. So similar to the buy or sell that we did for the bonus ep, where we went through each squad member and said whether they're worth keeping around and building a future around, or if we just get rid of them or not renew their contracts or whatever. We're going to go down the squad list and give each of them a rating for the season. It's going to be harder for some than it is for others, and we're going to try and be as concise as possible because of the sheer amount of players that we've got to go through. And now I've got to get the squad list up. So the men's first team. Okay, off we go. Right, so we start with Mike Maignan. And this is out of 10, and it's for the season across all competitions, just to
Okay.
clarify.
I'm gonna give him a 7 out of 10, but I'm nervous that might be a little high for his standards. For his standards, I think it was a bad season, but I think for keeper standards, he still is easily top 10. Right? I think he's done a great job. Double-digit clean sheets again. That was never in doubt. But again, injuries. Injuries. It's going to be the story of his career at the end of when he hangs up the gloves, whatever they're going to say Mike Mignon missed more than a full season's worth in his opening 3 campaigns with Milan. So we've had him 3 years and we've essentially played him for 2 of those. And that sucks because I do believe he's a special talent. So we could get that sorted and he comes back fully fit, because I don't feel like he ever really was this season. I think we see those Scudetto numbers again, and he's good. So 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I hope that's one of the things that a new coach will bring as well. Is they could potentially bring a new goalkeeping coach. That's a separate discussion because obviously we only hired Tony Roberts a year ago. But
Yeah,
the new
he
medical
wasn't
staff,
very
like
effective.
it's gonna. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's bits and bats about that I think Mignon didn't help himself with. But that you can find out more about that on the Substack. We wrote something on Mignon and the thoughts on how things are going internally. I'm giving him a 5.5 Mignon.
Oof.
And I think that's harsh, but I'm judging it relative to the levels that we've seen. I think you can't give a 10 out of 10 season to a player who was outstanding but injured for quite a lot. And therefore, that's why I wouldn't give him that for the Scudetto season, say, even though he won us a lot of points.
Okay.
You have to factor the injuries in, but I'm judging it relative to his previous levels of performances, which I think were down. I think the numbers across the board, even the underlying numbers, suggest that it wasn't as good a season for him. in terms of keeping goals out. He wasn't helped by external factors, but he was letting in too many at his near post. He seemed to lose command of his area a bit. And then also you factor in the injuries and the fact that, towards the end of the season, he didn't seem to be busting a gut to play. Let's put it that way. I think a 5.5 is maybe a touch on the harsh side. I think probably the answer is somewhere between what we've picked, but
yeah, it's probably 6.
I'm just going to try. Yeah, I'm just going to offer a tad of balance.
Forgetting all the penalties, I don't think he saved any penalties this season, did he?
Yeah, none out of 12 or something.
Penalties
Maybe
faced.
40.
This is the league that I'm looking at. Penalties faced 7, goals conceded 7. So yeah,
it became double figures with others. I'm sure it did.
Probably,
It
yeah.
was Dortmund one, and yeah.
And he missed 9 league games as well, so that's about 25% that he was absent for.
Yeah. I mean, like the most recent injury is a dislocated finger, and that's like it's unlucky more than anything. But he's again muscle problems and stuff, so it's frustrating. Mirante, I guess we can run through the rest of the goalkeepers pretty quickly. Mirante, almost not applicable, but
yeah, two games, right?
Yeah, NA for me. But if I had to give a rating, I'd probably say a 5 because he looked pretty bad in those games.
Yeah, I was gonna be even harsher than that and say 3. I mean, how many goals did he concede in those 2 games?
Good question. 3 obviously against Salernitana. No, 2 against Salernitana because they brought Lapo Nava on. But yeah, he didn't look good in that Salernitana game. Not positive ratings for him, but of course, good professional, departs with best wishes and stuff. Nava not applicable. Like we just didn't see him. Sportiello.
I'm gonna give him a 6.5. He didn't play much. He played, this last stint that Mike was injured. Kept a few clean sheets, made a few big saves. Still not the best goalkeeper, but we never thought he was. Did a good job as a backup keeper. So I'm actually kind of content with his season. It wasn't anything special, but it definitely wasn't a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. 6.5 for all the reasons you said. I think we've got a reliable deputy with him. He'll never be more than that, I don't think, but that's fine. He's absolutely fine. He's at the age where he can do it for another few more years. Move on to the defenders then. Il Capitano, Davide Calabria.
6. I don't. Yeah, not a whole lot to go on there. Mistakes often, but I think his rating's going to be hyperbolic from a lot of fans. I think they're going to give him a 4 or a 3 because of some tweets they see. But overall, I don't think he was that terrible. He just definitely wasn't incredible either.
Yeah, he's limited. Like we know that the best that you're going to get out of him is 7 out of 10 performance. He seems to relish these one-on-one battles where, if anything, he looks totally outmatched. Like we've seen it with Kvara in the Champions League and the PSG home game in the Champions League as well. He likes those, but then in the other games he looks completely out of place. Sometimes his one-on-one defending isn't great. He also struggled to get numbers going forward this season. Like Florenzi far outdid his attacking output in about half the minutes or just over half the minutes. So that's something, he doesn't take corners and stuff, but it's something to factor in. As you say, I think people are going to be way too sensationalist with this and give him a 2 because that's his number or whatever. But I think the fact that you don't really, there's nothing that comes to mind as being like, yeah, he was a disaster multiple times. He's probably good. Like he was quietly one of the more consistent defenders in a back line that really struggled, but that doesn't mean that he was great either. So I'd go with a 5.5. So yeah. Caldara not applicable, although we did get to see him. So for that, I'm leaning towards a 10. It was the pleasant surprise, and the hot take was proven right from you. So respect.
Yeah, it exceeded expectation. I'll give you that. So
yeah, Florenzi. Another tough one.
I think the stats will favor him. If we were to deep dive on it, I think he'll look good, and I think it's because he played so many games. And like you said, he takes set pieces, so that's going to fluff it up as well. But for me, I don't think he's better than Calabria. I think he obviously, like you said, higher attacking output because he takes corners, takes free kicks occasionally. Um, I think he's probably in his last year or two. I don't think there's a whole lot left in him, and that's okay. I would say, yeah. Well, I'm gonna just sound like a parrot here, but again, 6 out of 10.
He made 40 appearances and got 7 assists, which, is not too bad. I think he was pretty useful towards the end of the season going forward. We know his limitations as well, but he has filled in on both sides.
And a
I
midfielder.
yeah, I think he's a pretty good squad player to have around. However, I've been made aware of the fact that him and Fonseca did not get along at Roma. In fact, it
Mm,
was under Fonseca that he was forced to Valencia and then PSG, which was no small thing, given that he was leaving his boyhood club and stuff. But that's something to factor in terms of what the future might hold. In terms of we might have actually already seen his last game for Milan if things do
mm,
go down that path. But yeah, if it were up to me, keep him for the final year of his contract. I think he was solid but unspectacular, and no worse but no better than Calabria defensively. So I don't really know what that says about him, and I'd give him a 6 because I think he delivered perhaps a little bit more than what was
mm.
expected. Matteo Gabbia.
Oh, fantastic. He gets an 8 for me. Played half the season, came back from loan. No one thought he was going to be what he was. In fact, we all thought, yeah, loan him out. That makes sense. There's not a spot for him in the squad. Maybe
Mm.
he does well and they buy him. Then we needed him, and he stepped up bigger than I think any other player this season. He was fantastic. So I'm going to give him an 8. Yeah, really happy with him.
Yeah, exact same rating for me. I think came back from Villarreal. None of us expected him to rip up any trees, and it was more just like defensive cover than anything, given the crisis. But he always performed. Never really had any stinkers, and if anything, he looked like the best centre back in the second half of the season, which I don't think any of us expected. So an 8 for me as well. Teo Hernandez.
Taylor Hernandez, always a curious case. The days that he shows up, he's the greatest player on earth.
Mm,
The other days, he's non-existent.
mm.
It's either he is the star of the show or he is a no-show. Um, that said, he had a lot more star performances than bad performances. Still one of our top players, especially when he was wearing the armband. So I'm gonna give him 7.5.
I am gonna go with a 6.5.
Mm,
Which is obviously a 1 mark difference. I think again, I'm judging it relative to the levels that we've seen from him. I just think that he went missing for quite a large part of the difficult part, the decisive part of the season. However, the reason that he still gets above a passing grade is because obviously he had that stint where he filled in at centre back and did quite well. He was pretty much always available, barring a very brief absence. So he racked up like the most minutes by a mile of anyone in the entire squad. You're bound to lose a bit of your edge while doing that. I also think he was a bit confused by the instructions tactically. It didn't give him as much freedom to attack the middle and stuff. So 6.5. Obviously, there's all the stuff swirling about his future. Might it have been his last season at the club and stuff like that? I really hope not, because he's going to be a very, very tough player to replace, especially with Fonseca coming in, who loves both these fullbacks to get forward. So I'd like to see him under him. But yeah, 6.5. But that is a tough one, a curious case, as you put it. Pierre Kalulu, not got much to go on there.
Yeah, he didn't play a whole lot this season, obviously, because he had quite a few injuries. When he did play, it was brief because he got injured again. So, can we give him a rating? Can I skip? Can I say not applicable?
I mean, he only played 370 minutes in total, according to the official website here, which was 9 out of 38 league games. It does feel harsh to give him a score, to be honest, because he didn't do anything really of note either. But we did see him at centre back and at right back again, which was
Mhm.
good, to show that he still has that versatility.
Yeah.
If pushed, I'd have to give him a 6, so that suggests that probably it should be an NA, because we don't have an opinion either way on it. Simon Kier. Il Viking.
Oh man, am I gonna get heat? But I think he had a really bad season. A really bad season. Um, I'm gonna give him a 3.5 and just take the hate in the comments.
Yeah, he played 20 out of 38 league games, which surprises me. Nearly
How many minutes did he
1,200
have?
minutes. Nearly 1,200, 1,171 minutes. Um,
I wonder we couldn't keep
Look,
him
right.
pace.
I'm gonna have to weigh this up like the scales. There's how much of it is his responsibility and how much of it is he played way too many games. You know, we had an injury crisis and like he shouldn't have been asked to start 2-3. He was coming off a pretty bad knee injury as well. You know, and we had to throw him
Yeah.
in there because there's so many other injuries and also like he's 35 now.
Yeah.
So you could argue last summer was when he maybe should have moved on anyway. Appreciate his leadership qualities. I'm glad he got his send off at San Siro and everything. But when it came to what he actually showed out there on the field, it's somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5. Then for me, he just
Speaking
isn't up to it anymore.
of that send off, as much as I don't think Kier is that guy, I think it's completely offensive that he only got 2 minutes in his final game when Caldara got, what, 35, 40 minutes,
He
whatever it
was
was.
He was injured.
Okay, well,
That's
then
the
there you go.
irony is that he had
The
some kind of muscle discomfort, and obviously with the
the first
Euros,
time I was ever going out of my way to defend him, and there
yeah,
was a reason behind it, so what do
there
I
was
know?
doubts about whether he'd even be named on the bench, but they decided to do it. And if you notice, he pretty much hobbled around out there. Just you don't have to do it. You know, you can do something. You can bring him on with like a second to go. I don't know, but yeah, with the Euros and stuff, I guess they didn't want to take too much of a risk. Be interesting to see where he goes next. I think I mentioned on the last week, like maybe he goes back to his team in Denmark or something. I don't know. That feels like a logical step. Maybe the MLS. Who knows? You know,
Maybe he just
something
calls it
like
a day. I mean,
maybe he
he's up there.
retires. In his comments, he suggested that he'll sort of weigh up his options, and if the right club comes up, then he might do one more year. But I mean, his body's giving up on him. I think that's
Yeah.
pretty clear to see. Terracciano, not. Can we say not applicable when there is something that we remember about him?
Oh, he gave
And
away
he's
a penalty with
definitely
his
good.
first touch.
And he cost us 2 points.
Oh, fucker. No kidding.
NA for me. Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't.
I'll give him a not applicable 20. Oh, because we bought him halfway. It said
Yeah,
21 matches. I was like, no.
not a chance. No.
Yeah, 21 total. With us, he didn't have that many.
He's a strange case, isn't he, going into the summer? I think, given that we're in the market for a new starting right back, as has been confirmed by like most sources, then we'll have to see what happens with him. Maybe a loan becomes something. You know, you loan him to Monza or one of those clubs we're friendly with and see how he gets on. Because I think we signed a player who has something, and I think we'll need to keep him around because of the quota thing.
Mhm.
You know, the homegrown quota, but. No good in being here as like a third choice, potentially fourth choice right back who's the third choice left back. You know, it don't make much sense. It's not helping anybody out. It was a
Yeah.
weird signing at the time. Could we not have waited and pulled the trigger in the summer if we still needed him? I don't know. It just feels a bit strange to me that he's here.
Yeah, I agree.
Malik Chow.
I think this was one of his worst seasons. 5.5. I know he had injuries as well, so I do feel bad about that. But when he played, I felt like out of all the defenders who were injured, and it was literally every single one of them, he took the longest to recover.
Yes.
In terms of ability, you know, not in terms of like matches missed, but when he got back, he just error after error after error, and unfortunately, they all were costly. There was no small error for him, and sometimes that's the luck of the draw. You know, that's how it goes. But so I'm not putting all the blame on him because it is hard to recover from those injuries. But I mean, I think he was responsible for us dropping some points.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going harsh with this. I'm giving him a 3. I think he was borderline disastrous more often than not. And that's when he came back from injury. I think we've seen something with Chow which should point us towards potentially evaluating offers this summer, and that is that he plays his best football in a 3 at the back. And when he was in a pairing, both before and when he came back from his injury, he did not look up to it at all. Granted, there wasn't a lot of chemistry. Granted, the back four was often exposed by the midfield. But yeah, clumsy challenges, just very little aerial ability as well. Like he was at fault for some of the headers that we conceded towards the end of the season. Look, he missed according to TransferMarkt, 78 days with a hamstring injury. He basically totally tore it.
Wow.
So that's difficult. It's hard to come straight back. We said it week after week on the pod. When these guys come back, they're going to need time to get back to game rhythm, and we didn't have that time. We were entering an already decisive phase. But I can't lie. Based on what I saw with my own eyes, he really, really struggled. He was way off the pace. And I think that means that he's one of the players, if he doesn't go, with the biggest margins to grow for next season. I really hope that in a year's time, we're talking about him having a fantastic bounce back season and a 7 out of 10, However, yeah, it wasn't a good campaign for him. Fikayo Tomori. Now, this is perhaps the most difficult one on the entire list for me.
Yeah. So my view on Tomori's season, I feel like from the start of the season until his injury, he was consistently dropping between 7 or 8, maybe 8.5 out of 10 performances, barring the red card against Roma in the third game that caused him to miss the derby. Consistently the best defender on our team, one of the top in the league. And then I don't know when he got injured, but whenever he came back from injury, I don't think I saw anything from him above a 6. So again, it goes to those injuries, the recovery. But I think based on that, I'm just going to meet in the middle on the averages and give him a 7. I do think he still was our best defender overall. I think Abia the best second half, Tomori best first half. But overall, I'm still leaning Tomori as our best defender. But it was getting difficult towards the end of the season there. If a big offer came in, I would be tempted.
Yeah. Feels like we're not going to get that big offer after the season that he's had, though. It's like the Leao paradox, isn't it? And maybe the same with Maignan. It's hard to cash out at full value after a difficult season for the club and individually. I think Tomori is by far our best centre-back. He's been our most reliable centre-back since he arrived. He benefited in the Scudetto season from having... we played a consistent back four. It very rarely changed, especially in a run-in. Then the last couple of seasons, it's all changed. We went from a 4 to a back 3. He's had so many different partners. He's even had Teo Hernandez next to him this season and Simic. He had the injury midway through the season, which was difficult, and it was the last thing we needed at the time. I think he's the player that's perhaps most influenced by outside factors. It was just everything was on fire around him. And unfortunately, even he wasn't good enough to put out the fire. And he also made his own mistakes in that as well. So I think relative to what we've seen, it's probably a 5.56. I'll go with the 6 just because he was still probably our most dependable. But yeah, it wasn't a good season for anyone in the defensive line, really, barring Gabbia. So I feel a bit for him, and that's cost him a place in the European Championships and things like that. So let's hope for a bounce back from him if, as you say, a big offer doesn't come in. Final consideration for Giancarlo Simic. We didn't see much of him after that run of a few games he got, but I wanted to mention him because I actually would give him a rating of 7, compared to the expectations. He's so young. He was 18 when he made his debut. He scored in his first start, which was a very emotional moment. There's something for the future there. We really need to keep hold of him. There's talk of him being sold to Feyenoord or whatever, but I just thought I'd mention him because I actually do have a score.
Yeah, I'm going to completely echo that. Same score, same reasoning, everything. I was really happy with him. I think he should have played a lot more of the season, to be honest, over some of the other guys.
Yeah, like how he wasn't getting minutes over Kier towards the end of the season. It's like, can we not just look to the future? But there we go. We move on to the midfielders then. I don't know what. I guess this is in order of surname. We had this last time, didn't we? But yeah, Yassine Adli is the first name.
Oh,
this is a tough one.
Yeah, I'm taking the safe answer again and just giving him a 6. It just high highs and low lows, and not a whole lot of consistency. It was like bad game, good game, bad game, good game. There was never even a run of 3 or 4 games in a row of all bad or all good. Like there was just no consistency across the board with him. And sometimes that works out in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. But I think I'm going 6 out of 10, and I would sell him if 15, 20 million is offered.
Be a nice game. I think 6 out of 10 is the correct answer, but for the purpose of balance between us two, I'm going to go with a 5.5, which seems harsh because, you know, he had his moments and he was perhaps a bit late in getting his opportunity. And then when he did put in some good performances with some bad ones, he was then basically totally removed from the starting lineup. But I also think he missed a big opportunity. You know, we never really had a set midfield. There was things about it that weren't working. He was given that deeper lying role, but then he also played a bit further forward at times, like in the Roma game when he scored his first goal. He never grabbed it with both hands. You know, he gave a reason for himself to be left out, and unfortunately, yeah, I think that means we're heading towards a bit of a crossroads summer for him. Depends obviously what the new coach thinks of him and what he wants to do, but I just think Adley, the path cleared for him to take a starting spot. Probably the same for some other names we're going to mention here, but he didn't really grab it because of his own inconsistency. However, there is still clear upside to his game, and he's only 22, 23, so he will grow. He just needs to figure out what he wants to be. And same for the coach, because he's used playmaker, box to box, deep line midfielder. It doesn't do him any good. Benacer, back of course basically in December, but effectively January after a long injury.
Yeah.
Scored a couple of goals towards the end of the season.
It's going to be really harsh because I like Benacer, but when you miss that much of the season and then you come back and you finally start playing and you're very obviously a bit overweight, your performances are dropping, you're not looking good. I think towards the end of the season, he definitely started to find himself again. You know, those goals were fantastic. Obviously, one was a penalty, but it was a very well taken penalty. I think overall, and it is harsh to criticize a guy who came back from a long-term injury, but also you knew what you were training to recover for, and you still showed up the way you did. It makes me wonder, were you really taking your recovery that seriously? You know, when you come back that, like 10, maybe 15 pounds overweight, he's a small guy. He shouldn't be like that. So
do you think it definitely was him being overweight, or do you think because he couldn't use his legs, do you think he bulked out too much in his top half?
If he put on a lot of muscle,
cumbersome.
It didn't look like it to me.
Yeah.
You know, unless he consistently put on the same amount of fluff as muscle, because if you just put on muscle, it's going to be noticeable. If you put on muscle and fat, you're just going to look bigger, you know? So I think a lot of it was fat. I don't think he was doing the cardio, which obviously he couldn't use his leg, you know? But I feel like once your recovery process is not the entire time you're immobile.
No,
you know, you're out for a month, maybe 2 months for his injury. And then the 6 months after that, or however long it was, you're working to get back to fitness to make sure those muscles have recovered and get back to full strength. And I don't know, it looked like he may have took it easy, which would have prolonged his injury for me. So I'm giving him a 3.
A 3? Whoa.
Well, it wasn't a good season.
Yeah. I'm surprised to read that he played 25 games across all competitions. I just don't have that much in my memory. I think too many people expected him to come back and instantly be our best midfielder again, and for him to instantly become the leader of the department, one that had struggled all season. We didn't see that. I think he had more bad games than good games, or at least more anonymous games where you think this isn't the Benacer that we were used to. He did lose a bit of that zip. I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt and say he spent a large part of the rest of the season sort of getting back into the groove, because we gave the same benefit to the centre backs. But I'm in agreement that he struggled for the large part. I'll give him a 5. It feels generous, but I'll give him a 5, and there's a bit of benefit of the doubt in there. Loftus-Cheek.
That's, you know what, he started off very strong. I was really happy with how he started the opening 3 games of the season. And then we changed formations after the first derby defeat. And he couldn't really figure himself out in any of the roles he was given after that. So a double pivot didn't work out too hot. attacking midfielder was a strange one. It doesn't fit his characteristics. I think that was more of a Pioli error than anything Ruben did wrong. But yeah, his season had a downturn, and then of course he also had long-term injuries. So I'm gonna give him a 5.5. I know that's harsh because he had record-setting goals for himself. 10. Yeah, I'll bump it up. I'll give him a 6.5.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well. I think giving him any more would be sort of putting too much weight into the numbers. He scored double figures goals, which is brilliant. Although 4 of them came in the Europa League. He played 40 games. I just wasn't expecting that from him, to be honest, given his injury problems in the past. I think he settled in among the best out of the new signings, and he had that really, really good purple patch from January into Feb, where he basically racked up all of his goals.
Yeah.
After that, I think he was out of steam. He did have a little bit of some physical problems. He also had a run where he started like double digits games in a row because we didn't have anyone else to put in the attacking midfielder slot, and I think he suffered because of that. We saw him less incisive and making bad decisions. We probably could do with somebody to rotate in that position, given that Fonseca's going to play with a 4-2-3-1, or more naturally, he's a box-to-box in a 4-3-3. Like that's his role. We saw it against PSG in the Champions League, which was one of the performances of the season. But I'll give him a 6.5 because I think there's something there to build on. And he played more than I thought he would. Yunus Musa.
That's a tough one because he played 6 different positions.
Yeah.
And he's shown it. No player should. And he didn't look good in all those either. So how much of his low rating is him and how much of it was coaching decisions? That's something to weigh up. I am going to give him a 5.5. I think there's a ton of potential there. I think he can be one of our best midfielders. He just needs a bit more consistency. So I do feel like it's harsh because it's not entirely his fault for the way it went down. I mean, he should never be playing right back or right wing, but yet he did. He played all over the pitch, and I think if they just give him a solid position, be it the double pivot or box to box, whatever it may be, I think we see him really flourish. I mean, he's still young, right? He's like 20, 21. He's got a lot of time to grow, and I think he will. But yeah, this season wasn't the best from him.
No, it was a bedding in first season. Like, to say we were linked with him really early in the last summer window, he ended up arriving quite a bit later than that. We went back to Valencia and decided he was the missing piece for the midfield. I still think that this is going to sound awful, but I don't think he should be here. I think we should have used those funds on a more natural number 6. However, he did fill in multiple positions. I do think a large part of his struggles are down to Pioli basically using him like a bandage to plug.
He became the new Krunic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And young, so that there is potential there. I would like to see him in a fixed position, which would be box to box in a 4-3-3. So all is not lost with him. However, on what we saw, there was some pretty bad individual performances in there. And for that reason, I think I'll give him a 5, weighing everything up. Pobega is a bit of an NA to me.
Yeah, he didn't play nearly as much as he typically would, but he came back at the end of the season.
Yeah, he had surgery on. He played left-sided centre back against Monza in that game where Simic scored, and he was doing okay. And then, of course, he blew his hip out or whatever, so he had to go and have surgery. Only came back towards the end of the season, so NA for me. Reinders, Tijani Reinders, Power Reinders.
I think we got to put him up there. 8. I think he was our most consistent player, played the most games. I think he only missed 1 game, and it was due to suspension. I could be wrong on that, but he played the vast majority of the games. I didn't like him at the beginning of the season. I thought he was very goal hungry, and that was because Pioli said he was going to play him defensively, and Tijani said, no, if anything, I'm an attacking midfielder. So I think there was a lot of extending himself to kind of prove a point, which is never good. But I think they both came to an understanding, and once he found his true position, he was our best player in a lot of the games he played. So what did I say? Did I give him 7.5 or an 8? Whichever one. Okay, I'll keep an 8.
And I'm going to give him a 6.5. I'm going to give him a 7. He played 50 games. That's a huge amount of games. He was the starter along with someone else we're going to talk about who just the summer signing who instantly became a starter. And like, it was clear that without him, we lose a bit in the midfield. I would like more from him in terms of end product. You know, we signed a player who had like 25 goal contributions last season. That doesn't necessarily translate directly to Serie A at all, because obviously the Dutch league's totally different. But just think there were moments where he could have done better in terms of end product. He was moved around a lot. As you say, he played deeper, he played further forward, seemed to have settled on him being sort of a box-to-box driver of play, and I'd like to see him play more there next season. But yeah, in terms of just settling in so well and not really struggling so much with the tempo of the game, yeah, they were in that tough patch where we were struggling to win, we were losing the big games. He did go missing a bit, and that's where we need to see a jump from him in terms of character. But overall, a successful first season. Now we move on to the forwards. We have got Samu Chukwueze.
That one's tough because he really did get shafted in playtime. You know, obviously he ended the season injured. But because Pulisic was the deal we got done first, Chukwueze didn't play a whole lot to begin with. And then when he came on, he struggled because he wasn't match ready. But you could see that there was a player there. It took him a while to get going. Once he found a goal, then he became helpful. And each goal that he got was, I believe, worth points, right? I know he won us a Champions League game, won us another one where we were down late in the season. I can't remember who it was against, but towards the end of the season, he got better. Then, of course, he got injured. So I feel bad giving him a really bad rating, but I'd also feel like I'm glazing if I gave him a good rating. So I'm gonna go 6.
I think the answer is a 5.5 or a 6. Like, either of those, you could say if you're being a bit on that. I'm going to go with a 5.5 just because he was our marquee summer signing in terms of the fact it was the most expensive deal overall. He he was coming from a really good season in Spain, you know, in terms of his dribbling stats. I think he had 13 goals, 12 assists, all comps. And we thought that he would be the starter. For all the reasons you mentioned, it ended up being Pulisic. And we didn't see enough from him, really. We saw a good stretch of a few games, and I'm afraid that's not enough for somebody who, you know, was one of the most talked about summer editions. However, I think he is probably the player with the biggest margins for growth in terms of that number in the entire squad. It wouldn't surprise me if next season, back to full fitness with a new coach who will use him in a different way, perhaps, he just explodes and we see more and more from him, because it was there in bursts this season, but it just wasn't there enough, I think, for a player that we invested a fair bit in. So 5.5, Giroud.
Giroud's tough, man. The numbers, if you just look at it on a numbers point of view, good season. If you watch the game,
use your eyes.
Not so much, you know. It's just look, he does these flicks all the time. They connect maybe 2 out of 10. But those 2 that connect are an assist, you know, like it's when it works wonders. When it doesn't work, it is a counterattack that almost always leads to a goal or a shot on target. And that happens way too often. I don't like that. I think he's a slow player, always has been. You know, speed has never been his forte. It's not like you're going to get quicker at 38 years old, you know. So we saw that kind of hurting our counters as well when you'd have guys super quick like Chukwueze, Pulisic, Leao, Teo, all blasting down the lines. And then you have your striker who should be in the middle of the box with everyone else to receive those crosses. He's, you know, just passing the midway point. So I think we missed a lot of goals, actually, because he was on the field. Also, as a striker, he needs to be able to score from open play with his foot. His goals were all headers or volleys or penalties. I think he had like maybe one goal where he dribbled and then shot the ball and scored. The rest are all first time. And that's not good, you know. In the modern game, you can't get away with a poacher like that as your main person. I think Leao's numbers, Pulisic's numbers, Chukwueze's numbers would all be so much higher if we had a guy more like Okafor but better up top the whole season. But anyways, I'm just attacking Giroud for the player he is and not the season he had. 6.5.
Yeah, after all that, yeah. I've got the same score for pretty much all the reasons you mentioned there. You kind of have to weigh up the numbers versus the performances. I think that it's weird. I think we're actually going to struggle in some way to replace Giroud's goals. Like, if we get a new striker who comes in and instantly matches his goal tally, presuming that they're young and stuff like that and need time to adapt to the league, unless it's Xerxes or whatever, then happy days. I don't think we're going to struggle to replace his performances. Like, it is going to be such a blessing having a more mobile striker who's hopefully a bit more intelligent in the build-up. And I'm not saying Giroud didn't work hard. I think he did a lot of stuff that went unnoticed off the ball in terms of the pressing and whatnot. But yeah, as you say, he was often behind the play, and his link-up play left a lot to be desired. But
And I think he could have been better if he didn't have to play as much. If he got an appropriate rest, I think he would have been better. But every time he had a long stretch of games was when you'd see it dip game after game after game, and it was like, hey, give this guy a nap. He was 40 years old. Like, and he had a clean sheet. We definitely got to give him credit for that moment of the season. So 6.5.
Yeah, Jovic.
That's another interesting one because he was awful. No one anticipated much. He had a year left on his contract, and Fiorentina said, "Just have him for free. We don't want him." That's never a good signing.
No.
That's not what you want as your previous employer's recommendation, but it is what it is. And somehow he found a lot more goals than we all thought he would. It just took a while, and then once he got to that number, he stopped scoring again. So it was a very curious case with him. I'm still going to give him a 5. I think the amount of games he blanked in far outweigh the games where he came on as a second striker and was able to tap something in. When he plays as a second striker, fantastic player, but we don't play a formation with the second striker.
No.
And as a lone striker, it's not it.
Yeah, and even just starting games in general, he seemed to struggle. It was like only off the bench that he did stuff. Maybe there's something in that, you keep him around because of that. He's an option to bring on and potentially change games, but he doesn't really change games. He doesn't get involved that much, He's just there to hammer home anything loose inside the box. I'm going to give him a 6 because I'm balancing what you said. Like, he arrived on a free. He really was an emergency deadline day signing. And for him to score 9 goals, I almost want to say it doesn't really matter how they came or in what like, he scored 9 goals and he cost us nothing. I don't think that's too bad. And I think, I don't know. I just think that we know he isn't the answer, basically. So it's a difficult one. But in terms of what he gave us in this 1 year and the circumstances in which he arrived, he needed to get into shape and all that kind of stuff because Fiorentina really didn't want him around. I'm going to give him a 6, and who knows? He might do something next season under the new coach. But we'd have to renew his deal first, so that's something to weigh up. Leao, this is a shitter.
This one's fun because everyone says he has had a horrible season. He didn't. He matched his goal and assist numbers from last season, which was his best ever at 27 in all comps. This year he had 15 goals, 12 assists. Last year he had 16 goals, 11 assists. So same thing. In the Scudetto season, he had less. He had 14 goals and 10 assists. So
almost the MVP.
League MVP. And he did better last year and this year than that. So, you got to weigh it. Like, yeah, the performances where he ghosts are so frustrating because you could see it's an attitude thing. It's a work rate. You see him walking on the pitch sometimes acting like, I don't have time for this, whatever it is with that. I don't know. Extremely frustrating to watch at times. But when he is on, there's not a player on this planet better than him. And I truly believe that. I think we have a gem, and he hasn't been properly pushed by a manager who will manage him correctly. Ancelotti the other day said, if I had Leao, I would beat him daily or something like that.
Yeah,
which is not a good quote, but you agree. You see a guy like Vinny Jr. who has very similar characteristics. Going to win the Ballon d'Or this year. I think that's almost unanimously agreed upon. That could be Leao. Leao could be Mbappe as well. It's scary how good he is with his horrible work rate as he has. I'm not saying he's Balotelli lighting things on fire, getting arrested at the airport because he told the police to valet his car. He's not doing that. He's still a good dude, but the talent's there and the work rate is missing at times. But I genuinely think he's one of the best players in the world right now. And if we could just unlock that, he'd be 30 goals. He'd be crazy. And all that to say, I still think he was one of our best players. So 8 out of 10.
8, yeah. I again find myself thinking about it relatively based on what we've seen, and I just don't think he hit the same levels this season as what he has done in the previous 2. He's still our game breaker. He's still our match winner. Best player in the squad in terms of talent, ability, the way that he can unlock things. Still has the same problems. He's approaching his prime years now, and we see him ghosting too many games, as in literally ghost, just wander around. And you'd hope that would sort of be ironed out of his game by now. But I think that's just him. And I think that's just what you get as part of the overall package. I really hope that a new coach is going to help bring some consistency to his game, because he had another goal drought this season in the league, which was quite a big one, from September onwards. And you can't really ignore that. He's our highest paid player. You expect him to always at least be involved in something. And it wasn't always the case. However, the numbers are still good. The potential is still there for them to get even better. And for that reason, I'm going to go with a 7. I also think with Leao, he's one of those players where the media buzz around him far outweighs what is actually going on. There was all the talk of that goal drought while he was getting bunches of assists and creating chances, and if you've just watched with your eyes, you realize we're leaning so heavily on him still. But yeah, it's tough. You could do a whole podcast on Leao, to be honest. Which we might do over the summer. But yeah, 7. Now we come to Okafor.
Okafor is an interesting one because I feel like out of all the strikers we have, he should be our starting guy. He should be our main dude. I think he's better than Jovic in every category. I think he's faster than Giroud. I mean, I don't think that's up for debate.
You reckon?
I have an idea.
I'm not sure.
I think he's the best striker we have. He's underutilized, and that shows in the numbers. But his goal per 90, insane. He comes off the bench and just changes games every time. And I think if you were to look at it, zoom out and look at the macro picture, and just look at goals scored and games played, you're going to say, oh, he had a bad season. And I don't know what those numbers are, but I'd imagine that's how it went, because there were a lot of games where he came on and he only did get to play 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes.
6 goals in the league in 28 games, but then it's 869 minutes played. So
exactly. So I mean that shows you how underutilized he's been and how productive he's been in those lack of minutes. But how many assists does he have?
Good question. Keep going.
He had 2 league assists, and 3 total of all comps. So
okay.
I mean, look, those are decent numbers. You make him start, and you start him in the middle and not on the wing. You let him start with Leao, with Pulisic, maybe even with Chukwueze behind him, or Pulisic behind him, Chukwueze on the right. I think you're going to see huge numbers from him, but this is rating on the current season, not on the future season. And I'm going to give him a 7. I think we could have got more if we used him correctly, but what we got was impressive for how we used him.
Yeah, full agreement. Nothing really to add on that. A 7. Again, hope a new coach uses him more. That's the thing with Fonseca, is that he has sometimes had to target man, but other times he's like David, is a bit of a false 9. He gets more involved. I think Okafor could emulate that. But also, he was all right on the left when he was used there. Mm-hmm. I quite like that he gets to the byline, he takes his man on. So I think there's a lot of upside there with Okafor. And we come finally to Pulisic.
If we're going off of how you did it compared to historical seasons, then it's a 10 out of 10 because he's never hit numbers like this before, never even close.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, I'm not giving him a 10 out of 10. I think he blanked in a decent amount of games, but the games he were on, I think he won us at least 15 points alone by his goals.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
it was a lot.
He won me a lot of money betting against Madison, so that gives him +2 in the ratings as well. And yeah, he was incredible. Very few people expected it. I'm not surprised. I said it was going to happen. We could pull that up. One of two good predictions.
You
And
put your chips all in on CP.
brother, I won. Yeah, I think it was for Pulisic. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 as well.
8 out of 10. Yeah. 8.5. 8.5. I'm gonna be whatever the anti-nationalist thing is. No, not that. You know what I mean. I'm gonna lean over to your side, to the USA side for once, and say 8.5. Again, balancing expectations, the fact that he'd had difficult seasons at Chelsea coming to us, bargain really as well when you consider the price tag and how important those goals were, how many points they won us. 8.5, outstanding. And again, I'm excited to see him under a new coach because Fonseca does use a technical winger on one side generally and a more athletic winger on the other. So I think that might marry up quite well. But yeah, fantastic for us. And he sells a lot of shirts too. Pioli, final one. Pioli, Pegs.
Sorry, guy. I know it's the
Steve
last
Pegs.
time I had to mention your name on this podcast. Probably we'll do it in the future as well. But last time I have to, I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. There's more head scratching decisions than anything else. It was time to go. Thank you for the Scudetto. Thank you for getting second place, to be honest, because there were moments in the season where it did not seem possible. There were moments in the season when I thought we were winning the Scudetto as well, so maybe 4 is extremely harsh, actually, but I'll move it up. I'll give him a 5.5.
I'm going to give him a 4.
Okay.
Look, again, I'm judging relative. We won the Scudetto. We reached the Champions League semi-final. This season, we did not battle for the Scudetto from basically December onwards, maybe even before that. We got knocked out of the Champions League group stages. Yes, it was a tough group. One of the teams ended up reaching the final, but also I think there was a lot of parity in the group, and we were made to pay for the goalless draws against Dortmund and Newcastle, games that we should have won. Got knocked out of the Coppa Italia at home by Atalanta. Atalanta are a decent team, but you can't let that happen. It's an obvious trophy trophy target for us. And we lost to a domestic rival in the Europa League. So pretty much a disaster across the board, if you ask me. And for that, I can't... we had some moments again. We always do because we're a talented team. We had a good winning run leading up to that Roma 2 legs and stuff, but I am afraid we failed in every single objective this season. And people can say, yeah, but we finished second. We were allowed to finish second because Juve completely fell off a cliff to the extent that now moving forward with someone else. So I'm afraid it wasn't a good season. It's almost a shame that he's gone out this way, but it was always going to happen this way because if he was successful, we were just going to keep him. So it had to go this way in a way. But yeah,
I think we only won 2 of our last 10 games or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah. Well, we are lucky in a way that Juve were crap, and also we kind of had Bologna breathing down our necks a little bit by the end. It wasn't good, and that was after. We had another crisis point as well, where we were letting in tons of goals. The defense completely fell apart. Injuries, I partially apportion blame to him as well, so I can't fully use that as a shield for what happened with Pioli. I massively appreciate what he did over the nearly 5 years he was with us. I'm glad that he got the send-off that he did, but if you're just isolating this season, it's so easy to see why it cost him his job. Even for a management that are just happy with top 4, even they couldn't keep him after this season.
So we did only win 2 of our last 10, and there were 4 draws in that. One was 0-0 against Juve. The other 3 were all 3-3 draws, 2 of those being teams that got relegated. So
yeah,
I think that tells you everything you need to know about how the end of the season went for him.
Yeah. I got 2 really quick questions, then we're going to round it up.
Very quick, because I'm already late.
Hevanley, would you take Griezmann? He had 18 goals and assists last season.
Yep. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, me too. I think we need experience. You know, Giroud's leaving. Griezmann has been there and done it. I think he's really, really good. Like when I watch him for France as well, I can see, you know, he's fantastic. And Ohai Mats asks, do you believe we'll have fewer injuries with the new support staff? We kind of touched on it, you know, when we were talking about the injuries that that have come this season. The answer is I hope so.
I thought he was going to ask if we believed in God, and I was like, brother, you're not ready for this conversation. And you basically did. So it depends. I know we're getting a new staff all around, so it might be worse. You know, we
Yeah,
won't
you
know
never
until
know.
we get there.
Yeah, I wanted to use this question to just quickly mention the staff that is being lined up by Fonseca. I can't find the fucking thing. One of them's Paulo Ferreira, who you might remember from Mourinho's Chelsea and Ancelotti's Chelsea. He's coming in as the assistant, apparently. Here we go. Then we've got Thiago Leal, who joined him when he was at Roma. He's just a coach. Paulo Moreau, I believe. He is the new athletic trainer by the sounds of it. He was formerly of Spartak Moscow, joined Fonseca's team in 2022. So I think he will have a big impact when it comes to the injuries and the athletic preparation, training sessions, recovery, all that kind of shit. And then you've got Antonio Ferreira, who has historically been his goalkeeping coach, but we'll see what happens on that front. But that's the staff that I wanted to mention. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Appreciate the season's done, but your support really is appreciated. Thank you to all Substack founding members. I've been your host, Ollie Fisher. AJ, cheers for joining.
Thanks
and we
for
will
listening.
catch you next week.
Gol! Ancora Teo! È una meraviglia! Il gol di Teo Hernandez da un'area all'altra! È una meraviglia! Senti il mio cuore!